right, welcome to week 2 for the foam terrestrial session. We're actually going to start this this first fly, which is like a boatman slash backswimmer type fly, not in the vise, but actually by cutting the foam. And you can tie these in a ton of colors to make a match. Like this one's tan, obviously, with some brown legs. Boatmen and backswimmers change colors. Well, they don't change colors, but their color changes kind of depending on where they are. They feed on algae, so you can find them in lakes and rivers and streams, as long as there's like vegetation there for them to eat. You'll find them. This pattern's not. It's probably not a staple in many people's fly boxes, but if you got a lake nearby with some vegetation or something like that, this pattern can serve you well. So with the size 14 hook in the vise, all we're going to do is we're going to start off with this just a piece of foam. I'm going to tie this in brown. And on a bigger pair of craft scissors, see I've got these Fiskars here. They were like $10 or $8 or something like that. But the one blade is about a 1/16 of an inch wide, and that's actually like the actual diameter of the foam that we want. So when we cut this, we're just going to line that blade up so that it sits right along the edge like so, and then just start to trim. And you'll see it start to peel off like so. And you can finish it off if you like, or just trim it out from there. Totally up to you. And so we have basically a square or maybe a small rectangle of sliver of foam. The idea is that it just covers basically the shank and maybe just a little tiny bit extra. This will be the only time we actually do this, but this was a good way to cover how to get your foam real slender and an easy way to do it without investing a lot of time or tools or anything crazy. So again, I've got a size 14 hook in the vise. I want to be using some 8/0 and black. You can absolutely change your thread out to match the color scheme for the fly that you want to tie. Now I'm going to start my thread about 2 bodkin widths behind the eye. I'm going to go ahead and measure that out. Just make sure I've got roughly that. And we're just going to tie this tag in and go back until really you're comfortable with getting rid of it, so you can rip it out or cut it off. And with touching turns, we're going to take this back right to the barb or where the bend starts. Just want to make sure you avoid that hook point. And you can go down just inside the bend if you like. So you're sitting something about like that. Now as we come back forward, I'm actually going to open this up and make spiral wraps coming forward at roughly a 45-degree angle until I meet up with where I started the thread. What this does is this provides a way to seat that foam right on top, and it gives the foam something to bite to a little bit when we go back over it. So I'm going to take my little piece of foam, and I'm just going to pick a side. Any side's fine. I'm going to cut this at about a 45-degree angle. Let's see if we can get that down there. So we have a little sliver sticking out like that. Now the reason we do this is so that when we line this up, this front tip piece, when we line that up with where our thread starts and start to tie it in, you can actually just grab a little tiny, the little tiny front part of it there, and start to really just kind of gently open spiral wrap this back. Now this is going to want to shift on you pretty good. That's just what it likes to do. So you can kind of hold it up while you're tying it in if you like that better. If it actually turns and starts to lay to the flatter side, that's fine too. Everything in the middle is going to be covered up by dubbing on this fly, so it's not a big deal. But we're going to take this back until about the hook point, and I'm going to kind of adjust this and make sure that it's seated flat across the top of the shank. And once I have that, I'm just going to hold the foam and then just pull down on my bobbin. And that's going to lock this whole front part in. And so as we advance the thread towards the back, it'll be much easier to correct. So again, we're just going to do a couple of loose turns over. You can see the foam's wanting to shift. But making that little break point right here at the hook point for the foam makes it much easier to control. So we have this front part locked in, and now we're only dealing with this little tiny sliver in back that needs to be adjusted. And then once you have it adjusted the way you like, you can actually pull this over and say, hey, is that going to come across? Is it far enough back? That kind of thing. I probably can use another turn in there myself. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And once you have that distance, again, just hold the foam and just pull down firmly. Don't overdo it. Okay, so we're going to move into some dubbing. So if you got a material kit, we're going to move into this Golden Peacock Starburst fiber. These fibers are very long. They're probably better suited for streamers and things of that nature. And we don't need a whole lot here. This is very easy to overdub. You can see that with what I've pinched off here, there might be 20 fibers or so. And we just kind of want to pinch one side, pull from the other, and line that back up. Don't line it up directly from end to end. We want to have like a little bit of a taper to the actual dubbing itself, and so by kind of playing with it a little bit and stretching it out, that'll work a little bit better for you to tie this in. I'm going to turn my vise to this side. And you can use wax here. I'm just going to start to dub this on. I'm only going to worry about what's up top here. I'm not going to worry about the bottom. And once I have my noodle started, I'm going to put 2 to 3 turns in. And now as I start to work this dubbing, keeping my fingers moist and working directly towards the actual hook shank. Don't bring it all the way up when you're dubbing. Just work right there at the shank. It'll make dubbing this a whole lot easier. And we're just going to continue this process as we come forward. And actually this technique works really well with a lot of different types of dubbing. And then once we get to where our thread started, you can literally, that's one of the nice things about the Starburst, even though it can be a little bit tricky to dub on, once you have it on, you can literally just tie it in and trim it out. Like so. We want to go ahead and groom all the back part now. So any stray fibers, we want to have this body relatively tight. A few fibers hanging out here and there is no big deal, but we don't want these extra long ones. So we'll take care of those now before the legs impede us from doing so. And it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. It's, it's just a fly. It's something you can take fishing. These are great for bluegills and stuff like that. Next, I'm going to move over to some dark brown legs. Again, you can just adjust this with whatever color. I'm only going to peel off one round rubber leg here. That's way more than we need. You can see that it's much longer than the entire fly. You can actually just pinch in the middle and kind of collect it to form a loop, and then cut the loop if you want to divide it in half. That's the way I like to do it. I think it just makes it quick and easy. And you set this aside and use it for another fly. And then even on something like this, depending on your size, I guess, you can actually do it twice. It's going to be up to you. I'd prefer to have it, me personally, I prefer to have this a little bit long and trim it down to size when I'm done with the fly. But so that's up to you. Don't cut it precisely right up front and then get mad at yourself because you overcut. So there's a couple easy ways to do this. You can actually just take this material and slide it up underneath your thread and on the top of the hook shank. That's if you're tying clockwise. I tie counterclockwise so the material comes to the front, or the tire side, camera side. And so you can just literally slide it up underneath, and you can see it sitting kind of cattywampus, and that's fine. Just place a second wrap over to make sure we don't lose it. and it's going to roll around and all that stuff. These legs can be kind of a bear to tie in. So there's an easy way to do this, I think. So we're just going to tie this in. I'm going to take the piece that wants to move towards the back and just hold it towards the back of the shank and just place 3 to 4 wraps in going back. Now this thread's going to want to keep building up in the same place, and you're going to have to force it or jump it to the back often. And then I'm just going to grab the leg and kind of swoop it around until it's sitting on this side, and I can pinch both on the side. Let's see if I can do that with change the angle of my hand. It doesn't like to do it sideways. And then you just place a wrap over. And then once you've got that wrap over the top, your legs should be relatively like this. I mean, they might be up or they might be down a little bit. But we can adjust all that in a minute. The main thing here is if you're doing it right, you'll see this little nub up front. Okay, so now we can adjust the legs so that they're sitting right at the side and start to wrap back with several tight turns. And we're going to start to jump this just a little bit. And when I mean a little bit, I mean really a little bit into that dubbing. See, it keeps sliding forward on me. We want to try not to do that, but it may just do that to you. There we go. And as you do that, they should start to sit perpendicular to the hook. Okay, next we're going to move back to our body dubbing. And you really only need about 1/3 of what you used before. We just don't need much. So go ahead and dub this on. I'm going to grab my legs and make sure they're sitting where I want them, which is off to the side. I'm going to fold them to the back. And now with the dubbing on top, you can actually start to wrap over those legs. And we don't want to go very far. You can see I've only got about a bodkin width of dubbing sitting on top of those legs. As I've dubbed back, I'm going to twist up that dubbing, and I'm going to come forward. Until we get pretty much up right behind the eye. We place half dozen turns or so. Again, we're going to go ahead and groom this now, so you want to collect all that dubbing. I like to try to cut it out on top so that the foam hides it, any loose fibers if possible. If that doesn't happen for you, again, it's not the end of the world. But what it will do is you can see how it's built up a nice little thorax area on this particular fly. And we just want to trim this down so it's nice and even. Just mind your legs and your thread. Oops, knocked the light there. Now we're going to go ahead and take this back strap over the top. Now once you've pulled it forward and it's sitting flush, don't over tighten it. Once it's sitting flush, just place your finger gently on top so it holds like this. Take your thread, place a half turn over. Don't go around the full way. And the reason why is because now we can grab the foam and lift up. And by doing this, that's going to realign where our thread is sitting on the shank, basically where the head's going to be. See, if I lay it down, it's coming up to the eye. If I lift up, it's coming to the back. When you have it lined up so that the thread is in line with your dubbing, now just pull down and place another turnover. And that's where your thread will be instead of encroaching on the eye. It's really easy to do here. So with several turns of thread over the foam on the backstrap side, and then a whip finish, the fly is basically done. One thing I like to do to help keep that foam from moving is not even do a wet whip, just add a little bit of super glue to your thread and place 4 or 5 turns over. That's going to lock all that foam into place and keep it from shifting, especially if you get you know, like a monster bluegill or something to whack that thing where it could rip the foam off. That's going to help support that. Now into whip finish. I'm just going to get my whip finish loaded, or my whip finisher loaded. I'm going to pull all that foam back and place about 4 or 5 turns right in front under the eye. I'm going to trim that off. Now to cut the head, all we're going to do is just take our foam and drag it out directly in front of the eye. And we're going to come in with our scissors and line our scissors up directly with the hook eye and just trim. And that's the head. You can trim this round if you like, or whatever. Again, stuff like that. I like fingernail clippers to do a little tiny head like that if you like. You can make your head a little bit bigger if you want. This just kind of comes with the territory of like looking at the bugs that you have in your water and trying to get the head part to duplicate whatever it is they look like. So to finish off the legs, I'm going to take a stiff pair of scissors and I'm going to measure my gap. And now that I have that distance in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and line that up from the back of the bend of the hook. And once it's there, you don't want to pull tight on the legs, just pull them so they're just gently taut. And I can line this up and say, so ideally you want the legs to be one hook gap length past the bend of the hook. And now we can just come in and trim those straight out. And there's your back swimmer or boatman imitation. Well, it keeps going under the hook. There we go. So that's it for this fly. The next fly we're going to move into doing just a real simple beetle, and we're going to put a hot spot in using some McFly foam. So that's next. All right, so let's get into this little bug here for the second fly this week. This is just a simple little foam beetle. You can really mix and match and choose the colors you want, especially if you're fishing these for some bluegill or something like that. You may want to try to be a little bit more specific as far as the imitation and color choices are concerned. If you're going after, say, some trout or something, you're typically going to fish these on average, at least in the northern hemisphere, right, kind of late summer into early fall, kind of in that area. So July, late, maybe mid-July to, say, end of September, beginning of October, that kind of area. And they can prove to be effective. So we'll go ahead and get this out of there. Oh, as I drop my hook. So I'm just putting a size 14 dry fly hook in the vise. With foam, I mean, you can actually use weighted nymph hooks if you like, and so on and so forth. So I've gone ahead and pre-cut this to fit basically the actual inside the hook gap, so from the shank down to the hook point. And I'll have that ready. I'm just going to tie that same bug up again. So go ahead and do that if you haven't done that. You can, again, like we were saying, you can choose like your dubbings and whatever. So I'm actually going to blend this together because this is what I want to be using here. Because I kind of want some of the shininess of the tinsel, but I also don't want it to be over shiny. And so I'm going to blend a couple of these together. So I'm just going to take a little bit in my finger. If you need a reference point or something to help reference, you can use something like a nickel or a quarter maybe, and just to kind of give yourself a visual representation. I know some people kind of gravitate towards that, so that's a little something you can do. And also you could blend these in like a coffee grinder if you have a coffee grinder. That's what I normally do myself, but I'm sure that not everybody has one, so we're going to do it by finger. So to blend it, I've just got roughly even amounts. This one's obviously larger. I'm just going to kind of fold it over on itself until I've got something about like this. And you can 50-50, 60-40, 70, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to take and pull and restack, take and pull and restack. This is kind of ripping it in half. There's what I've seen called the haystack approach, where you kind of wad it all together and you pull from the top and then you realign it, and then you pull some from the top and realign it. And that works too. Also, you can just kind of open this all up and then fold it back on top of itself, and then do that little haystack maneuver. I see people doing that. Or use a combination of all three, or again, a coffee grinder until you've blended this to your satisfaction. I try to make sure that all the fibers are relatively equally distributed throughout the blend. So once you have what you like, and you are going to lose some dubbing when you're blending by hand, but that's okay. So once you have what you want, and save it in a little bag or something. Okay. So for my thread, I'm going to go back to the Uni-8 in black. And I'm going to start this thread about 2 bodkin widths behind the eye. And you can trim out that tag whenever you're ready. I'm going to create nice even touching turns along the shank, so we have a nice thread base, and I'm going to come back forward with open spiral turns until I get to the front. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and cut this a little triangle into this tip, and it's going to make it easier to attach it. So you just get a little triangle on there. And then what I like to do here is just to help seat this really well, just take a little bit of super glue and place it right on top. And when we go to line this out and tie it in, we're just going to put the very tip of that triangle, we're going to line it up with our thread and just make a nice tight turn over. Now you are going to want to keep adjusting as you wrap this back to make sure that your thread is sitting on top, or I'm sorry, that your foam is sitting on top as you make your thread wraps. Once we have that coming one way, I'll go ahead and cross it over and go the other way just to help tighten this all down, and then I'll just make some consecutive wraps coming to the back, kind of squishing down some more foam as I go. So you get something about like that. Now we can go ahead and dub. You can use wax here if you like to dub this. I don't typically use a lot of wax on flies, not these little trout flies anyway. I do on some styles when I need the extra grip. So we're just going to slide that up close, and I'll place a few turns over just to get that dubbing started. And now I'm going to use my fingers to twist right at the hook shank, leaving all this at the end untwisted. And I've explained this before, but I'll go ahead and do it again. I do that so that I can either add to my dubbing if needed, and it usually comes up seamlessly when I do it that way, or I can take it away with no problem. Another thing too for your body, if you like, you can actually just use peacock herl and wrap peacock herl for a body. That's always a popular choice for this style of pattern or type of pattern. Really just working this. I want to get this back up to basically where everything started. I'll tie that in, and then any of my leftover stuff I can just trim out and stick that back into my dubbing pile. It's easier to groom this now. Some people don't really care necessarily whether or not they've got the little fuzzy sticking out. Some people do. So that's really just a preference for you and what you like. But it is easier to do this now than once we add the rubber legs. I kind of like it tight myself, compacted. I'm just going to go ahead and gently fold this foam over the top, making sure I've got it lined out. I'm just going to use my finger to kind of hold it down and just gently place 2 loose wraps over so that as your thread comes back around, we're winding up in the same, roughly the same place where we started. So I'll do the 2 loose wraps, make sure I've got everything seated where I want, pinch it tight on the sides and just pull down. And then that'll help. Lift this foam up, place a few more wraps in front. And if you like, you can actually add a drop of glue up on the front side underneath. Like so. And I'm going to bring my thread back over the center of that foam. Next, I'm just going to get a round rubber leg. Just peel one off. I'm going to get it so that the bottoms are basically evenly aligned or really close. And then it's kind of folded over on itself up top, creating a little loop that we can then cut. And each one of these sections will be a right and left leg on different flies. So you only need the one section. I'm going to do that same thing again, just fold it over so the cut ends are relatively close, and I'll cut this loop again. Now, an easy way to do this is actually line the tips of the one side up and get the distance that you want. That way we don't have to cut the front. We can just trim the backs. I usually go for close to a hook shank, maybe 3/4 of a hook shank. That's really kind of up to you. You can do these separately, or if you're wanting to, you can actually do it at the same time. Just place this on top, a couple of loose wraps. You may have to do a pinch wrap to get them to stay for the first few wraps, so that when they're sitting kind of like this. And now we can just literally drag one to each side. They might want to move around on you a little bit. It's not uncommon. I try to get them sitting on the side of the foam if possible. And if you want to shorten that distance up a little bit, you can just gently pull on your rubber legs, and we can trim the back here in a few minutes. I'm going to go back to my dubbing and just get just a little bit. Now you don't have to do this part, but some people don't like to have that rubber exposed on the sides. Maybe you do, maybe you don't care. I'm not sure there's a real right or wrong here for that, but personally I like the look with a little bit of dubbing covering that up. And then also what this dubbing coming around will do is it'll also force those legs to stay open just a little bit more, a little bit wider of a stance. Oops. And before you tighten it, you want to try to get these legs where you want them. There we go. Now I'll come through with some tight wraps and just trim that out. Okay, and we can do any final grooming here in a few minutes. I do try to groom as I go on these ones just because there's a lot of stuff that gets in the way. Especially on the top side. Okay. Next I'm going to move over to some McFly foam so we can put a little hot spot in up top. So if you get your McFly foam and you can peel off one of these, they're basically like little rolls, and you'll see that it's kind of webby in there, and whatever. We just need to get to the one end. This is what lots of people prefer to use to make little eggs. And we don't need this whole stack. That's going to be awfully big for this bug. So we really only need, if you kind of flatten this out a little bit, we only really need about a third. And a lot of times if you flatten it out, it'll almost naturally open up a little spot around a third or a half. And so I'm just going to peel that back, about an inch or so, until I've got something. When it stretches out and it's twisted, it's relatively the same thickness as the foam. It's just kind of how I gauge it. Okay. And I'm going to lick my index fingers and thumbs, both on the right and left side. And I kind of twist this together a little bit to try to help just capture it a little bit better. And I'll put a couple of turns in, pull down tight, and I'll put another turn or two in the front and the back, kind of like so. Now I'm actually going to pull everything back and jump my thread up behind the foam. One reason I don't like to cut this foam out too early is because then I lose the leverage of being able to grab it and hold it, or pull it and hold it back as we do this. Now we can just add a whip finish, or if you're not proficient at whip finishing, you can actually just put a few double half hitches in here. Just slide it right up on inside, and then just add a little drop of glue, either on the top or the bottom, or, which I think is better, is to go ahead and put about a 4 to 5 turn whip finish in here, just by grabbing everything, pulling it back, and now you've kind of exposed this. And we can trim this out. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my foam so that it sits just out in front of the eye of the hook. And don't make sure you don't cut it too short. It's better to or leave a little bit over and keep trimming it down till you like the size, rather than cut it too short and all of a sudden you don't. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim this off. You can leave these heads square. I'm just going to kind of use some fingernail clippers to kind of shape it and round it out a little bit. You can use your scissors or whatever you like. Again, you can just leave it square. Totally up to you. Now for the foam, the McFly foam, I'm going to go ahead and twist it together, lift straight up, and I'm going to bring in a bigger pair of scissors, and you can kind of see, if I put it down along the foam, you'll see what's below this blade here is all the bigger hot spot you're going to have up top. So you can, I'm going to be a little ridiculous here, but you can cut it higher and have a bigger and more visible hot spot if that's what you want. Or if you want it a little lower, I mean, you may want to play with this, but go ahead and try it long, and then again trim it down as needed. And then to do the back legs, cut them to size. If you like them the same as the front legs, or close, if you want them just a little bit longer, then just swing these legs in one at a time and trim until they meet up. And then you'll have basically even legs. Or you can bring these to the back and then decide that way when you trim it, if you want them however long. This one's going to actually be just about the same. There we go. And so you can really decide how big and small and long and all that you want these. Same thing with the fly itself. You can decide that. Now for my beetles, I typically like the front legs a little bit shorter than the back legs. Again, that's all preference, and whether or not you're trying to be a little bit more specific on imitating a certain beetle that you may have where you live. So all these things can kind of come into consideration and play when you're putting one of these together. And so really that's it. That's all there is to it, to make a little foam hotspot beetle with legs. I'm not sure if it actually has a little name or not. I'm sure somebody's named it something or other. But these are pretty popular, again, towards the later summer months, and then into early fall. Especially when you see, all the grasshoppers and all that kind of stuff out. These are good to have around. And with the foam, you can float a little nymph or something off the back of it if you like, and so on. So that's it for week 2. Appreciate all of you guys being here and gals. Yeah, so I guess we'll see you next week for week 3. Where we'll tackle the Chernobyl ant and the chubby Chernobyl. And yeah, enjoy your week, everybody. Thanks again for being here. Happy tying. Take care. And we'll see you next time.